Hi everybody, let me light the candles here. There's another one. Well, maybe I'll do this one too. Seems a little dark. There we go. Oops, that won't work. Maybe I'll move them in a little closer. Hi everyone. Welcome back to Ghost Stories with Spooky Miss T.I. That's me. Happy Friday. The weather's turning colder here in November 11th, and Veterans Day. It's been warm this week, unseasonably warm, perfect for election week, but now the cold is coming in and it's time to start settling in and putting a log in the fire and lighting the candles as the evenings are dark earlier and earlier. Hi everybody. So the topic, first of all, if you have a cup of tea, a cup of wine, any kind of a beverage, let's salute one another and toast to our connections here with one another on this space right now and here and beyond. Here's to here and everywhere. Cheers. So this is going to be an interesting chat tonight. I want to talk about how communicating with the newly dead, and it seems like a macabre kind of thing to be talking about, but it is something that if you are lucky enough to really love someone well and be loved really well by someone, then when they pass, that connection, they're not just all of a sudden just gone. There is not just an absence of them, from my experience. And one of my earliest recollections of being contacted and communicated with and by the newly dead was when my grandmother died. I was maybe 19 or 20 years old, and I had moved away from home, and I was living in Howell, Michigan. And my Grammy Ethel had been sick a long time. She had suffered from rheumatoid arthritis for many, many years. And she was a mentor to me. She was somebody that gave me so many positive, uplifting ways to deal with my own disabilities and my own illness that at that time we thought was rheumatoid arthritis. And so it was a snowy, blizzardy night, and my friend Laura and I had gone to visit her sister about 40 miles from our town, and we left as the snow started, and as we were driving, it was blowing and blizzarding, and it was whiteout conditions. And we were inching our way along the highway, and she was driving, I was just trying to see, we could just see the snow blowing in the headlights. It was like just driving in white. And I was watching along the side to make sure we didn't miss our exit and just keep going forever in the blizzard. And all of a sudden up ahead, we had our flashers on so that if cars came up behind us on the freeway, they would see that we were going about 3 miles an hour, whatever it was. And up ahead, I saw what looked like headlights coming toward us, and it was extremely bright. And it wasn't like two lights, so it seemed like one. And I thought, oh, there's a big truck with its brights on across the median and the other lanes. And then I realized it was coming directly towards us. And it was coming directly towards us at a pretty fast rate of speed. And all of a sudden it was like, phoom, and I went, oh my God, and I jumped back, and Laura's driving, she's like, what? And as it passed, it just went right through me, and I got this total rush, and as it went right through me, I saw the face of Granny Ethel. And I thought, okay, well, that was interesting. And she said, what happened? I said, I thought I saw something. I'm okay. And we made it home that night, and it was late, and I sat down with my dulcimer, and I wrote a song about her. And I had gone, the verses, and I had just played it through 100% when the telephone rang, and this was landlines. This was when I was 20, and it was my mom. And she said, T.I., I wanted to call to let you know that Granny Ethel passed away tonight. And I was like, I was stunned. I was just stunned. I kind of knew it, but it was right when I finished the song that I got the call. And I felt like Granny Ethel had come to let me know I was far away, to let me know that she wasn't gone, that I was all right, that she was all right, and here was this precarious situation, and boom, through me. And then I put the song to music, finished it, and found out that she had passed. I feel like she gave me that, and gave me that song, and our mutual communication is from where that song came. So that was the first time that happened with me. Many, many other times it has happened as well. I have to tell you that I have never been to a wake, especially, but also a funeral or memorial service where the recently dead person being celebrated was not present every single time. From childhood, I could feel them there. And then as recently as, once I became more in tune with focusing just beyond that veil where I can see just beyond what's physical. It's like, it's sort of like, those posters that used to be popular that were just all dots. And if you had a special glass, the glasses you could put on and it would come together and you could see what it was showing. Or if you could just unfocus your eyes just a little bit, you could see what the picture showed. So it's sort of like that, looking beyond the veil. And I could actually see the person there. And this has been 100% of the time for me in the past many, many years, maybe at least 10 or more years, where 100% of the time I see the person. And sometimes they communicate with me there with something, wanting me to do something. So this has been I've been able to do this. I've done this forever, as I said. And then there was a time, and I believe I told you this story in another story, of a young man who had passed unexpectedly. It was an accidental drug overdose. And he did not realize that he had passed for a long time. And one of the things that he told me was that the most confusing thing to him after he died was that he just kept, suddenly he felt like he was dreaming or tripping or something, because he was first with these people, and then he was with those people, and then he was with those people, and then he was with these other people, and he was just like, poof, in this room, and poof in that room, and poof in that presence, and poof in that presence. And it was very disorienting and disconcerting to him. And what was happening is that when his loved ones were thinking about and talking about him, he was pulled into that energy. Because when we talk about, even think about those who have passed, and really take the time to do it, and for the newly dead, this is what we do. We gather together and we talk about them. We viscerally feel the loss of their body. We grieve in our souls and in our hearts and in our bodies. And as we do that, our energy they join us in that energy. They are present with us. I know I've said so many times what Rachel learned when my husband's father passed away. We were all in Florida when he passed, and all his children were there and grandchildren, and we sang him over. It was a wonderful, wonderful way to go. And he passed just after dawn, and just as he left, you could feel him leave the room, and then the morning symphony of the birds started right after that, and it was like, okay. And Rachel had to leave right after the service. The rest of us got to hang out and sort of slowly readjust, but she had to go because she was on this big tour that was like 11 shows in 10 days or something, from Florida all the way to Maine, all along the East Coast, all by herself. And as she was driving, she was playing a song. I think it's A Long Journey Home. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. And just as she came over a precipice, a hillside with the Chesapeake Bay on her left, and the sunset, and it just filled the car with light, and she said she felt, Grandpa G felt his presence. You know when someone's with you. You can close your eyes and know that your lover is in the room with you, or your sister, or your partner, or your friend. You don't have to see them with your eyes to just feel them there in the room with you. You can tell when someone leaves a room. And she felt him there and just burst into tears. And he sat, she said he was like in the car, filling the car with her as the song played. And as the song ended, the sun just hit that spot and the light left and he was gone. And she pulled over to the side of the road and called me and said, Mama, I figured it out. I know what happens. First we're here, then we're everywhere. And I was like, absolutely right, baby. That's the truth. First we're here, then we're everywhere. The young man who had accidentally overdosed, he was very disoriented and confused because he was going boom, 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 from person to person to person, and it was making his head spin. And I told him, it's not one at a time. You don't have to be here or there. You can experience the love of all those who love you at the same time from just where you are. And you can be with them all at once. And I remember his face when that realization, and it was like this, it was just a relaxing, he had all this, he was all tense, and it was just this relaxing, like, oh. And then it wasn't long after that his mother of his child let him go, didn't need him to be right there. And the little girl, light filled the room. The sun was setting at this time and filled the sunroom. Shafts of light just pouring in, and then it was gone, and the little girl turns to the sunroom. She's like 2 years old. She says, bye, Daddy. That little girl wasn't operating under a suggestion. You know what I'm saying? So this has just been my experience. My family has suffered some tremendous losses. In recent years, we were so lucky. There are 10 children born in 13 years. And both of my parents survived into their mid-80s. And every child survived. My parents never had to experience the death of one of their children. Miscarriage early on, but never the death of an adult child or a partially grown child. And so my dad died. My mom had been sick. My dad was sick. My dad died at the time that my mother was in the hospital in critical condition. She was dying too. And as a matter of fact, the doctors told us that she had hours to a short day to survive. She had no pulse in her extremities. She had gone through some serious trauma from steroids. I mean, we had the trauma because the steroids just had a horrible reaction in her, and it was not peaceful at all. But at this point, she was peaceful, she was quiet, and her organs were shutting down. They said her kidneys were shutting down, she had no kidney output, and it was the day of my father's wake. She was able to come and be by his side, when he died. She was, an ambulance took her from the hospital and brought her to the house. And she was able to sit in a wheelchair and hold his hand for a long time, say the rosary all together. And then she couldn't sit up anymore. She had congestive heart failure herself. And so we took her to her room right next to the room where my father was dying and put her in bed there. And all my siblings were with my dad. It was the very end, where all the signs are, death is so much like birth. You count breaths and you look at you time things, But everyone was in with my dad, and I decided to stay with my mother. And my daughter Era had given me a heartstone, a rose quartz heartstone, and I had it next to my heart, and so it was warm. And my mother was in bed, and she had dementia, but she knew she was present. She was the most Zen person at the end of her life. Her dementia meant that she didn't remember what happened 20 minutes ago, or maybe sometimes 4 minutes ago, but she was in the moment. And she said, "Oh, T.I., dying is so hard." And I said, "I know, Mom, I know." And she said, "Oh, I'm gonna miss your dad." And so I took the heartstone out and I said, "Here, Mom, put this at your heart. This will help heal your heart." So I sat with her and sang to her as I listened in the other room to what was happening there. And all of a sudden I heard my siblings say, "There he goes, there he goes." And my mother has her hand on her heart with the heartstone, and she's just got her eyes closed. And I finished the song, and my brothers came in and said, "Mom, Dad's gone." And she looked at them incredulously and she said, "What?" And we thought, it's the dementia. And they said, "Dad's gone." And she said, "No, he's not." And they said, "Yes, he just died." And she looks over in the corner of her room by the bathroom door and she said, "He's right there. Look, he's right there." I didn't see him that time, but she sure did. He was right there. He was with her. But at his wake, it was a huge kerfuffle to figure out how to be with my mother and go to my father's wake as well. My father loved to be the center of attention. His wake was, when I got there, I was at the hospital. I got there late, everybody was already there, and the family had time to go see him. It was open casket, and I walked in, and it was just, I was so stressed out because I knew my mother was dying, and my father was there, and there he was, standing amongst the flowers at the head of his casket, just looking around the room like this. And we had hired somebody to be with my mother so that if anything changed, they would let us know and we could go there, leave my dad's wake and go be by her side. But he was standing right there, and I said, "Dad, I know you really want to be here, and I appreciate that, and I'm so glad you are. I love you so much. But you could be with Mom too, and she really needs you." And then it was like he went, I couldn't see him anymore, but I felt him around. I have not seen much of him since I did that. He's showed up a few times, but that time he just kind of made himself inaccessible to me. It was like he closed his door. And then the next morning when we went to see my mother, she was sitting up eating oatmeal. We called her Lazarus. My mother was on death's door multiple times. We called it our practice runs. My father even. But then 30 days later, my mother again was coming close and close and close to death. And one of the things that would happen with my mom is when we would all gather at her bedside, she would always rally and come back and stick around. And, I don't know if you know about fetal cells, but women who have had children or had pregnancies carry the cells of the fetal cells of their children their entire life. And I had this theory that when all 10 of us got there, all of our fetal cells had a powerful impact on her body and kind of brought her back from the precipice. So when she was finally dying, some of us spoke to each other and decided that not all of us should go, that some of us should be there, and the ones who needed to be there should be there, and that others of us would stay in our place and light a candle and call her out and call her to us away from her body. And that's what we did, and that's how my mother passed. And she was extremely present at her wake and her funeral. And we had a New Orleans jazz funeral for her with a second line, and she was just, it was a joyful, joyful experience. Then a year later, we lost my brother Tom to pancreatic cancer. He had been in remission, and it came back and took him very cruelly. And then again, so that loss. So then cousins and friends, it's just that time, it may be the age that I am, that it may be the time in the universe. I think it's more in keeping with that I'm older, and so there's more people that are going to be passing when I'm older. As we get older, the more people we love also. I have a big family, and I have a big circle of friends. And if you love big, you're going to lose big too. But boy, I got to tell you, it's worth it. So that brings me to the most recent experience with losing someone, with someone dying very close to me. And this is very new. Let me take a drink here. Just a minute. My sister Kate and I were very close. We shared a bed our entire early childhood. We would sleep back to back and keep each other safe from the ghosts in our house as children. She was one that understood the spirit world very much, as much as I do, and never doubted, even when there were times when I could see things and she couldn't. She never doubted it. She just believed it because she trusted me and believed me, and because she herself had experienced so much. So Kate started experiencing some heart issues. She was having some arrhythmia and ended up thinking she was having a heart attack, blah, 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 ended up at the cardiologist, and it turned out that she had rheumatic heart disease. When she was 5 years old, she had rheumatic fever, and it had damaged her heart. 2 valves were severely damaged. And they were going to see about waiting, see how long they could wait, but it was getting harder and harder. When your heart's not beating efficiently, you don't have energy. she just felt like poop on a stick all the time. And so she was advised to have the surgery. And the plan was to repair one valve and replace the other valve, the one that was too much damaged. But one valve was still functioning okay, but they could repair it, then she would be so much better. So she decided to do that. Now, my other sister, my younger sister, Colleen, had bladder and kidney cancer. They took care of everything in her bladder, but the kidney cancer kept coming back. So they decided that the best course of action was to just remove her right kidney, and that would take care of the disease. You remove the diseased kidney, it had not spread, it would eradicate the disease. So she was going to have kidney surgery, and Kate was going to have open heart surgery, all within a few weeks of each other. And so from my experience, I just didn't, I wasn't going to waste any opportunity to spend time with them. So our youngest sister, Mimi, was in Chicago, going to be in Chicago. She had been up north. She was going to be in Chicago for a high school reunion. And she said, why don't you come? Now, I was scheduled to go the following weekend. Kate and I were going to go through my dad's books before she had surgery, because she didn't know how long it would take for her to recover enough to be able to go through the books. But as it turned out, she was already in such a weakened state that she knew she couldn't do the books. So I decided to go the weekend Mimi was there, and I'm really glad I did. So we got together at Carol, my sister-in-law Carol's house. That's Tom's wife. On her deck, it was a beautiful day, beautiful fall day. Colleen was over. Kate and Michael, her husband, came over. Cousin Joey came over. And we sat on the deck and we just talked and we were just together, like normal, like we are always together. And I asked Kate, I always ask direct questions. I said, Kate, how are you feeling about this? And she said, absolutely fine. And now, we called Kate the queen of hyperbole. Everything was absolutely or phenomenally, or she loved adverbs. And absolutely fine. I feel perfect, she said. And I said, do you have any anxiety or anything? I mean, this is a big deal. And she said, I have no anxiety at all. She said, I know everything is going to be just fine. I just know it. And I have no worries at all. And I said, well, that's great, and she meant it. So I asked Colleen the same thing. She said, oh yeah, everything's fine. Colleen also denies that she's sick all the time too, but so they're both going to be perfectly fine. And then when Kate's going to go, because she has to teach in the morning, she and I are so much alike. I taught for 40 years. This was her last year. She was going to retire after this year as a school librarian. She'd been a teacher and a school librarian for many, many years. And so she had to work the next day, so she needed to get home and get some rest. And so as she was leaving, we took a picture of all of us together in the living room. And then as she was leaving, I gave her a big hug. And I said, I love you, Kate. I'll light a candle for you when you have your surgery. And she said, thanks, T.I. She said, everything's going to be just fine. And she gives me a big hug, and she says softly, no matter what happens, everything's going to be just fine. And I said, I know, I love you, Kate. I love you too, T.I., she said. And then they left. And that was just Kate. No matter what happens, everything's going to be fine. I didn't, I knew a few other people, a small handful of other people who had had the same surgery. And they felt so much better afterwards. So I said that to Kate, you're not going to believe how good you feel after this. I was right, as a matter of fact. But so then, on the morning of her surgery, I sent her a text message. We communicated by text a lot. We also would talk on the phone. And I just said, lit the candle, Kate. I'm praying for a successful surgery and that everything is okay. And I love you. And she said, thanks, T.I. I love you too. And then she went and had her surgery. We waited all day. It was a Wednesday. I had been in Nashville the week, right after I was in Chicago. I'd gone to Nashville to take care of my grandkids there. Well, one of the parents was somewhere in the world, and the other parent was somewhere else in the world doing their on tour for their music careers. And I'd gotten home Tuesday, and her surgery was Wednesday, so one day home. And I kept waiting and waiting all day. Finally sent a text to the kids. Anybody hear anything? What's going on? Nothing, nothing, nothing. Things are taking longer than expected. We got a thing that there were complications. It's longer than expected. Well, as it turned out, when they were trying to repair the one valve, the tissue was calcified and there was a tear. Most people do not survive that on the operating table. Most people die right then. But since they were prepared to repair or replace both valves, and somehow they were able to keep her alive, save her on the operating table, and she was in critical condition. She had an internal heart pump. She was intubated. She was fully sedated in a medically induced coma to give her heart a chance to heal before having to go back to work full time, and it was extremely critical. She was extremely critical. On Thursday, my husband and I were traveling up north to Wisconsin. Now, we had last spring in May, the weekend before Memorial Day, we had our first annual Sisters Weekend up north. And it was Kate, me, Annie, Colleen, and Mimi, all five of us. And we had a long weekend together. And it was so perfect. It was just wonderful. I am so grateful that we were able to do that and that we followed through and did that and didn't think, let's do it next year. We made it happen. It wasn't easy. Mimi was in New Orleans, and I live in Michigan. It's a 11-hour or more drive for me, and Mimi, you can imagine, from New Orleans. But we all made it. So I was on my way back there with my husband for our fall weekend, or a week up north, which is one of my favorites. And driving through northern Michigan, we headed north and went over the bridge and through the UP, and the colors and the vistas and the light. It was so beautiful, and I just every at every turn, every so many miles, all of a sudden I was thinking about Kate, and I was saying, oh, I can't wait till you retire and can come up north in the fall. Wait till you see this. So we got there in the evening late on Thursday, and Friday night, friends were coming. We were getting reports about once a day about Kate. Things were looking good, then things weren't looking good. At one point, her blood pressure dropped. They were able to bring it back. And then something else happened. She was retaining fluids. They were worried about her kidneys shutting down, and then they called in a renal specialist, and they were able to pull her back from the brink again. So it's Friday morning, and I was sitting in the living room up north, and up north was my mother and father were there, but it was my mother's place. That was where I spent the most time with her in my adult life, because we would go up north and be there for weeks at a time with her and siblings and nieces and nephews, etc. But But that was my connection to her is there. That feels like home to me. And my mother, I can't say she never left, because when people die, they're not like stuck places, but they pop in and out. Some people are stuck. I won't say that because I have experienced that, but I know that's controversial, but some people get caught in loops and don't, know which door number 1, 2, or 3 kind of thing. But my mom is very present up north. She doesn't haunt it. Sometimes cleaning people have seen what they said was a little blonde boy. Well, my mother, when she was a child, never wore a shirt up north. She would run around with her blonde curly hair. And I remember her telling me multiple times that for her, heaven would be to be a child up north. When we were doing Granny's Camp and all her grandchildren got to be there, she said, it would be heaven for me to have had a childhood like this, to have this place as a child. So my mom's there, and I always, when we come up, we always honk the horn coming down the road, let her know we're coming. And as we enter the door, both my husband and I say, hi, Mom, and my husband says, hi, Jackie. And it's just acknowledging that her essence is still there. And when we're there, she's there, because she likes to be there with us. I don't think she hangs out when no one's there. Maybe, but because she also loved her solitude there when no one was around. But so on Friday morning, let me back up a little bit. One of the things that I do, that I have been able to do, is communicate with people that are in comas. I know that sounds really weird, but I have done this by going to the astral plane and finding them there. When my husband's sister was dying, she was in a coma, and I was able to go and find her like that. And we were close, but we weren't as close as Kate and me. I have done it with other people as well. Found them, people that were injury unconscious, and be able to be there with them. And not tons of times, but a few times. So it's something that I'm comfortable knowing I can do. So when Kate's blood pressure was dropping, and that night when I knew they were keeping her in a coma after her surgery, first thing I did was go out and look for her, to just let her know that we're all praying for her. I knew she knew, but just to keep the connection is what it is. It's to keep that connection to the living. And I couldn't find her. And I couldn't find her on Thursday. And I really looked. I called to her, and I did all of our... there was a time, well, actually even now, that I could really think about her and think, oh God, I really got to call Kate. And she would call me that night. It was that kind of a connection. So there is no reason that I would not be able to connect with her. But she was nowhere. And it's not like I've gotten worse at doing this. I've just gotten better at navigating in the spirit world over the years. So I was sitting in the big leather recliner. The living room is full of furniture from my parents' home. After they passed, their good furniture came up north, and we threw away all the broken stuff. Oh, except some of it's in the basement. But that's how my family operates. But this leather recliner has been there for 25 years, at least. Maybe. I may be exaggerating, but I really think so. And so I'm sitting in the recliner. My husband was outside. It was a beautiful sunny day. So he was out down by the lake doing Tai Chi. And I was sitting in the recliner, and I realized that it wasn't that Kate was lost, it was that Kate wasn't answering my call. I was trying to leave voicemail, and she was not returning my voicemail. She was not returning my call. And so I talked to my mother. And when I talk to my mother, I don't talk out loud. I talk in my head. So there are those who could say that it's my own imagination and I'm just imagining these conversations, but I'm not. I got to tell you, there's a difference from me thinking about somebody and me communicating with somebody who has passed when I do that. It feels different. It feels different in my sinuses. It's a different vibration. My body is vibrating at a different vibration when I do that. So I decided to talk to my mother and I say, Ma, I know Kate's with you. I had a dream. I saw her with, I first saw her, and I see this when people are leaving, on a train with my mom and dad. And I saw Tom across the aisle. And I also knew that they would be with her. You know, there's no way that she was out dangling in oblivion by herself. Your loved ones come. You can count on that. Even if they're long gone or even if you don't even realize it. Your ancestors will be there for you. I've seen it, and every single person that has communicated with me after they have died has revealed that to me. So I knew she wasn't just out there lost in the fog somewhere. So I said, Ma, I know Kate's with you. It's okay. I said, but Ma, if she's going to be okay, if she's going to be able to recover, can you just send her back? Just send her back. Her children are so young. Her daughter just turned 30. She has little grandkids. We love her so much. There's so much more she has to do. She hasn't retired yet. She had big plans. Can you just remind her that she had big plans? And send her back. Tell her she can come back. Tell her she can come back. And as I'm pleading with my mom, who is giving me so much comfort, my mother had the warmest, most loving, comforting hugs of anyone in the world. She had a big, soft body, but the love poured out of every pore. And I felt her holding me and comforting me. And as she's doing that, I hear audibly, not in my head, not in the conversation I'm having with my mom, but in the air, in the house. The chair I was sitting in was at a corner, and there's an archway that leads to a hall. Living room goes on, and there's a hallway, and there's a bedroom, then the bathroom, then the stairs that go to the bedrooms upstairs, and at the end of the hall is the bedroom that was my mom and dad's bedroom. And I hear from the hallway loud, not like, what was that? It was clear and loud, and it was my father's voice. And he said, "My Bug." Bug was the nickname that he gave her when she was a little teeny baby. And he called her Bug his whole life. And he said, "My Bug." And I thought, oh, she's not coming back. She's not coming back. My father has showed up to me a few times. He's showed up to me in a particularly trying election when I was running to tell me I was doing the right thing. He's showed up periodically just with little snippets of revelation or encouragement. And he was there to let me know she wasn't coming back. She was there. So from Friday morning, I knew it. I didn't want it to be true. Then we got reports where she was getting better. And I thought, oh, God, maybe it was just a visit. Maybe Mom will get her to come back. I mean, Dad wants her there, of course, or whatever, but she was his biggest fan. And so each day I kept my candles lit, up north. I always bring a travel altar with me. And I have a selenite candle holder that I put a votive candle in, and it lights up the selenite and just does these amazing, ooh, that looked cool, these amazing vibrations. It looks a lot like that from the selenite. Could you see the shadow behind it? That's so cool. And I would light that each night out on the porch. My husband and I were sleeping out on the frozen porch. Our friends came Friday night and stayed till Sunday. And it was great. We had lots of fun. And we talked about Kate. And I was getting texts about what was happening, but there was not a whole lot of information. And I heard that they had moved her to a different hospital with a higher level of care. And she was still in a coma. And then each day, each morning, I lit the candle at night, and it would, of course, be out in the morning. And in the morning, I would sit at my altar, and I would ring the bell. And I would do my meditation and my blessings. And I would just say, Kate, I love you so much. And so, just like, sorry. So then on, we were going to leave Thursday. Thursday we were supposed to check out. We looked at the weather. Thank you, everybody. And snow was going to be coming in on Thursday. So my husband and I decided we would leave Wednesday evening and drive partway ahead of the snow and get a hotel, maybe Iron Mountain or something, drive 4 or 5 hours and stop. So Wednesday evening, we went for cocktail hour at my Aunt Gina's. She was up north. That's my mom's sister-in-law, my Aunt Gina, my elderly aunt. Talked, and Laura was there. My cousin Laura, her brother Greg was there, and his wife Jenny. And we talked and just, caught up, and how's everybody, what's going on, and how's Kate? And I said, she's critical. She's still in the coma. They're still maintaining the coma. They had put in a feeding tube. And then I get a text while we were there saying that things are going really well. She is off of the heart pump. They have removed the heart pump. They've removed the breathing tube. They've removed the feeding tube. She is no longer attached to all these things, and she's been like this for hours. And she's stable, and they're going to start waking her up tonight, and we're looking at, she might even be able to go to rehab next week. And it was like, oh my gosh, when I read this text, everybody there were like, oh, thank God, this is such good news. Oh, and I felt really relieved. Kind of, I felt really relieved. I said, oh, God, I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Things change, I'm telling myself. I've been wrong before, not very often, about stuff like this. But this is great news, and I just felt really hopeful. We had already packed stuff. We had everything done because we packed and did the linens and everything before we went to go visit. So we just went home, emptied out the refrigerator, got in the car, and started heading west. And we were driving northern Wisconsin. The drive that we take goes through the Chequamegon National Forest and the Nicollet National Forest, and it is vast wilderness with no cell coverage. You leave Hayward and heading west out of Hayward, and within 5 minutes there's no cell coverage for probably hours. We were driving along, I don't know what time it was, and I had downloaded podcasts so we could listen to them in the car because you can't stream anything. So we're listening to a podcast, and all of a sudden there's a ping on the little screen in the car that there's a incoming call, and I see I've got 2 bars, and it's from Lydia. That's Kate's daughter. And I just looked at David, and I just said, oh no. And we answered the phone, dink, on the car, I'm driving. And she said, Aunt Ti, Mom's gone. And I'm driving, and there's a bazillion deer, and there's this big golden moon in the sky, and there's clouds going over this golden moon in the sky, and it's illuminating everything. And I spoke to Lyd for a few minutes, and then when we hung up, I said, I need to pull over. I just want my hairs to go. And I just pulled over to the side of the road, and I took 3 deep breaths, and I just sobbed. And just, I don't know how long, and then we decided we weren't going to make it to Iron Mountain. We talked, and then I felt really okay. It was the most amazing thing. I felt that moon and the light and the universe so present and so close in that forest. The trees, the headlights lit up some of the colors, but there's pine forests and the moon and the clouds moving across the moon, and I felt okay. I felt so much love, and I knew who that was from. And I felt like there was, Kate and I used to sleep back to back, I told you that. And I felt like she was in my back. I'm driving, I still drove. I drove, I was okay. But I felt like she had her back against my back. So we stopped at the next town and got a, roadside motel in Minocqua. And that night, I had my first visitation dream from her. And it was, I love my sister Kate. And it was, visitation dreams happen just before I wake up. I always wake up after them, immediately after. And it's at random times. And this was, wee hours of the morning. And in the dream, I was in my Grandma Shipper's living room. And Grandma Shipper's lived next door to us in Chicago. And that was where everybody would go. She had arthritis, she was crippled, and so everybody would go to her house. She lived with her brother, my great uncle Jack. There was a bar in the basement, a real bar in the basement, and it was a house a lot like mine, it was a Cape Cod kind house, built in the 40s, early 40s, and it had the curved archways and fireplace, and there was a pool table in the basement, and all the uncles and aunts and everybody would gather together on weekends and for, whatever, and play pool and drink beer and lots of whiskey. I remember the liquor bottles lined up on the kitchen counter, mostly whiskey and scotch. And I never saw vodka. I didn't know vodka existed until later, but I was in that room, and I was standing by the door. Her front door was really weird. It had a curved archway and a very small entryway with a closet in it. A lot of wasted spaces in those houses. And then this arched front door, curved top front door. And I was standing in the doorway, and I looked across the room, and I looked in the dining room, and I saw my mom and dad standing in the dining room, and they were young. And they were like when I was a kid, and I saw Uncle Jerry, and I saw Uncle Gerald and Jack, and I heard Uncle Gerald's laughter. I had not thought about Uncle Gerald's laughter in so long, but I heard him laughing from the kitchen. And then my Grandma Shippers was sitting in her chair, and I could see her clearly, and sitting in a chair next to her, turned away from me, was another woman holding a cocktail and a cigarette, and she turns to me, and it's Kate. And Kate turns to me and says, "Oh my God, you can smoke in the house." And I woke up. Kate hadn't smoked in years. That was so Kate. And I was like, oh my God. And I felt even a little bit better. And then we got home and prepared to go to the funeral. Now, Kate's husband, Michael, and her kids were not prepared to do a funeral. They'd never... Kate always did everything. Kate was the one in charge, you know. She was the oldest sister of 10, for crying out loud. You couldn't get in charge if you wanted to. She just knew all the details. And she took care of all the details all the time. And so when we left, before we got home, we were checking out of the motel when I get a call from Michael. And he had a bunch of questions, and they thought they should ask me the questions, and all of a sudden, there she is. It isn't me thinking, I have to tell you this, it is not me thinking this is what Kate would say. This was my sister. The words out of my mouth were my sister's words. And I answered their questions. And they asked about, would she want this, would she want that? Oh, absolutely this. I don't say, oh, absolutely this. I'm not the queen of hyperbole. Kate is. And I was able to help with just the details of planning a funeral and a memorial service and a wake for my sister, because Kate did it through me. And I let that happen, and she was so there. She was so there, and she was so happy with me. It was like, oh, good job. You know, this is oh, good job, Tia. Good job. You know, and more dreams of her in more places. Dreams of her on, you know, as a teenager. She was the most gorgeous. I don't know if you've seen pictures of her. She's so beautiful. And she was this stunningly beautiful teenager and young woman. And so I would see us together, and we'd be laughing. Every single dream I had with her, we would be laughing all the time. So then, and of course, she was there at her funeral. She was there at the wake. She was right there. I know her little grandkids, little Annabelle, little Annie and Flora, just lost at the loss of their Amma. And she was just right there. She was not up next to her casket like my father was. She was down in the chaos in the basement of the funeral home, where crackers were from one end of the room to the other, and all those little kids were tearing around, and that's where she was with all those little kids the whole time. She was there with those children. She, at the Mass, she wanted a Catholic Mass. We had it in the same place that we had both my parents and my brother Tom, the same church. And as my boys came and Rachel came and her was sick, she wasn't able to come. But Ezra brought Loudon and Maggie and my grandkids, who are 10. And Loudon is this sweet, compassionate little boy. He was sitting with his cousin, little Davy Nickel. They were having a time of their lives. And so he was sitting with him at the church, and my sisters and I all sat together. And at one point, I think I don't know what it was being said, or maybe it was when Rachel was singing, that Annie started to cry, and then of course I started to cry. And Loudon just got out of his seat and came over and sat between the two of us and put his arms around us and just gave that, it's okay, we can patted us. And then then my cousin Joe did the eulogy. It was perfect. And that also, by the way, was her idea. There are 8 of us left. And even though any one of us could have done a fabulous job with the eulogy, it couldn't be one over another. It couldn't be one of us and not another. But my cousin Joe was like her big brother. And he was the king of the alley cats, and she was the queen of the alley cats. And she wanted him to do the eulogy, and she let her kids know, and Michael know. And when they said who should do the eulogy, immediately they all said Joe Lyons. So while he was doing the eulogy, it was a Catholic funeral mass, and if you've never done that, it's very ritualistic. Catholic masses are very ritualistic. But there was a stand with the incense holder, and it's one of those where you ding ding ding, where the chain clangs, and they do this with the incense, and then it spreads the smoke around. Well, this was hanging on the post off to my left, on the side of the church where Joe was speaking. And Loudon says, Amma, did you see that? And I said, what? He said, look over there. And the thing is swinging like this as Joe's talking. It was swinging. Nobody had touched it. Nobody had passed it. It had not been used yet for incense. That happens at the end of the service. And it just started swinging. And he said, that's Aunt Kate. My grandkids are kind of aware too. Isn't that weird how that is? Because we talk about things openly. And we watched it. We're like, yeah, she's here. Of course she's here. And when Joe finished, as soon as he finished his sermon or his eulogy, that was when Rachel sang. And she was positioned on the other side of the altar, on the other side of the, what's it called? I don't know. The other side of the altar, where the musicians are. And she sang a Green Sky Bluegrass song about I'd rather see beauty in pain. And when she started singing, just when Joe finished, just before he came down the steps back to sit with the congregation off of the podium, that incense ball, it didn't like slowly stop. It went like that. And it just stopped. And then when Rachel started singing, and all our attention was focused over on that side of the church, there were lights up along the ceiling, below the ceiling, but up above. And 2 different lights over where Rachel was started to flicker. And it wasn't, they hadn't been doing that. And they didn't after. And again, Loudon said, look, she's over there now. And she was over there. So then, we had the funeral party, and everybody, we had a big gang hug, and she was there, and she's just there. Well, when we left, my husband and my boys left from the party, from the reception, what do you call it? It's a party. But I had to go to Muskegon for a 3-day conference for the Michigan Municipal League. I'm a council person. I'm the mayor pro tem of my city, and there was a convention that I needed to attend, that I had planned to attend. And so I stayed an extra night in the hotel in Chicago and then drove to Muskegon. And after a funeral, you know, you're getting this kind of like, you know, you feel like you've been wrung out, you know, and we'd been through all this ordeal. It had been a week, and this was Wednesday. Tuesday is when I traveled. So it had been about a week since she passed, but it was like all the juice had just been wrung out of every cell, and there was just nothing left. You know, there was just, it was like starting from scratch. Oh, I have to back up. I hate to do this in a story, but I've been handling this thing the whole time, so I have to show you this. I have this with me here. At the wake, my cousin Beth, who I think is here, hi Beth, Aunt B, she got my sisters and I together. She said, I have something for you. And we all went in this little side room. And can I tell you how hard it was for us to get together without a bunch of people? Because of course everybody wants to talk to you. And she took out of her bag one for each of us. This is rose quartz. This is a heartstone. This is a healing rose quartz. Look at the size of this and the weight of this. She got these in China. And she gave one to each of my sisters and myself. And she said, this is to help you heal your heart for losing Kate. So it's here with me as I'm telling the story, and it lives on my altar in my room. And so when I do every day morning meditation, this is part of it. And it's like, you know, heal us all. This is big enough for us all. Heal us all. All of us suffer these great wounds. Heal us all. Thanks, Beth. So I go to the Michigan Municipal League. Just a minute, I need to take another drink. How late is it? Oh, I'm late. And I go to these sessions, and they're wonderful. And they're exactly what I wanted. It was the whole focus of the conference was how the arts can benefit municipalities and communities, and you know, that's right up my alley. So there was music, there was visual art, it was wonderful. But there were sessions on Friday, and I decided, I was so exhausted. I decided that I was going to go to bed Thursday night, and I was going to sleep until I woke up on Friday, and then I would just drive home and get home, and my husband was going to have dinner for me and his welcoming arms to come home. And so I did. And I hung out with friends on Thursday night from another city that we've gotten together at multiple conventions, and because I'm out front, you know, because I'm out there, and my daily poetry, I turn everything into art. And so the grieving of my sister, I turned into poetry and art. And I had been posting poems about my sister, so everybody knew what was going on with me. And you know, that's one of the benefits of that, is I felt so much love and comfort and support from people. So all those of you who reached out to me or didn't even let me know, and just saw that I was grieving and sent me love, I felt it. I really felt it. So this bed, it was this big king-size bed, this great hotel. I had a nice view of Muskegon Lake, and up on a higher floor. And I went to bed, and I slept so well. I just, you know, I had been waking up multiple times a night, and I had been for a long time, but especially since all of this. And I just slept so well. And I have to tell you that I was sleeping in that big bed by myself, of course. My husband was up here in Cadillac, and there, you know, there's always a bunch of pillows in big hotel beds. But I had a couple pillows, and I sleep on my left side because my right side still hurts when I sleep on it. But I just sleep on my left side, and that was my side of the bed when I slept with Kate. And I woke up, I stirred when it was still dark. I woke up in the night and I had all the other pillows. I felt something pressed against my back. And the other pillows, maybe I did it in my sleep, I don't know, but the other pillows on the far side of the bed were just pressed up against my back. And at first it felt like, and I said back to back, because that's what we would say when we go to bed. And it was the pillows pushed up to my back. And I just feel like, oh, and I was able to go right back to sleep. Usually when I wake up, I'm awake for a while, and I just went right back to sleep with back to back with the pillows up against my back. And so then I woke up in the morning. The sun was shining. Must have been 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up laughing out loud. I woke myself up with laughter. I was laughing out loud, and I was not laughing alone. Mixed with my laughter was Kate's laughter. And she had sent me the best dream that a newly dead person has ever sent anybody ever. It was so clearly from her, and we both woke up laughing, tears rolling down my, like, oh my God, I gotta go to the bathroom, laughing. Okay, here was the dream. So I'm witnessing, I'm watching, and I see Kate on the operating table. And I just see the back of the doctor, so I don't see any of the, any of the operating stuff. I just see, like on the movies, like they show in the movies. And all of a sudden, she comes flying out of her body. And she looks over at me, she goes, I can fly! Look, I can fly, I can fly! And she's like flitting all around, and then all of a sudden she goes, son of a bitch! Boom! And she's back in her body. and I was like, and then she shows me herself again, and this time she's in the bed. And this time I see her just kind of, doing this and inching out, and then up she is. She says, look, I can fly. And she just goes, heading for the window. She's heading for the window, and then she goes, oh my God, it was in charge. Back down into her body. And then a third time, the same thing happens. And the third time, she's like almost gone. She's heading out. She's flying all over the place. And she says, look, T.I., look at this. I'm so free. And I'm so free. And then she goes, son of a bitch. She's back in her body. And then the next scene, I see her. And she is sitting, I'm watching her, like from right behind her, looking at her body. And it's like it's all on a lake. Everything is on maybe a lake or something. I don't know, but it's very like nighttime, like very mystical. And she has a rope, or like if she was on a boat, it would be like the line the boat line up to the dock, and it's attached to her body. And I see Michael sitting there with her, and he stands up, and I see him lean down, and I see him kiss her on the side of her head and say, I'll be back, Kate. We're going to start waking you up. I'll see you soon. Something like that. And he walks out of the room. And remember, I'm watching from behind her. And she turns and she looks at me and she goes, she reaches down and she's got like this big scissors and she goes, and then she goes, and she was gone. And I was, in the dream, I was standing there all alone, stunned. And then all of a sudden, she's right back there and she goes, oh my God, worst exit ever! And she started laughing and I started laughing and the two of us were laughing so hard. And that's when I woke up. And since then, Kate's everywhere. I feel her every day, every single day. When she first died, I would just say multiple times a day, oh my God, Kate's dead. And now I'm like, hi, Kate. Hi, Kate. Before I go to sleep. It's like that would be the time when I would get in bed, often she would call me then. Hey, can you talk? And so I'd lay in bed to set my phone down, move it away from me and think, good night, Kate. Good night, Kate. First we're here, then we are everywhere. And all of us who grieve so desperately the loss of those that we are with every day, or that she's not gone. And you can access the people that you love in your dreams, in your waking hours. When you think of them, stop, take a minute, and really think of them. Don't think of them with sorrow. Don't think of like, oh, I can't believe you're gone. Just think, I love you so much. And you will feel them there. It will be hard to keep coming when people are just mourning, and you have to comfort them as they're just mourning. But that's what we do. And that's what our loved ones do for us. First we're here, and we're everywhere. Know that you're loved. Know that love does not end at death. That is the only thing that really and truly transcends the veil, the connection, the love, because when we love each other, we get on the same vibration. I know that sounds so woo-woo, but it's the only way to describe it. It's like, all cells, all molecules vibrate. And when we coincide, that love is so powerful. That connection is so powerful that it stays with us. All right, my loves, my friends. We are so lucky to be able to grieve so deeply, because we would never be able to do that had we not loved so deeply. Be well. Love well.